Time now for business. Let's bring in Catherine Bennett from our remote business desk here at France 24. Let's start with news from the United States. With a country that is still in the grips of the coronavirus pandemic and its economy still very fragile, the Treasury has decided not to extend relief programs, and that's a move that's got some economists scratching their head.
That's absolutely right. Now, one economist actually told the CNBC that this move was akin to taking the lifeboats off the Titanic. So you can see how media and how economists are reacting to this move. They say that it is simply catastrophic move for the country, according to certain economists. And that's because these relief programs were put in place during the first wave of the coronavirus pandemic back in spring, and they allowed the Federal Reserve to lend up to $4.5 trillion into the financial markets. And that's to stave off any financial turmoil. And so now, of course, that the Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin wants to withdraw these programs, they worry that that could lead to more financial turmoil. Now, they're set to expire in December, and so Steven Mnuchin said that they would not be extended beyond that date. And the reason he's given for that is that he says that the US financial conditions in the US are in great shape. He said that when the emergency is over, let's put these programs away. But of course, a lot of people are responding to that, saying that the emergency is not yet over. Now, the way that Steven Mnuchin sees it, he wants the Federal Reserve to return these unused funds. So that would effectively put $455 billion back into the government's purse. And that's money that he says Congress can use for more targeted coronavirus funds. Of course, this has been criticized quite roundly by a number of people who say that the US economy is simply still too fragile in order to even consider shelving. The Reserve actually responded quite quickly to the move, saying that these emergency facilities should continue to serve their important role as a backstop for our still strained and vulnerable economy. Now, of course, the concern is as well that this is simply a political move designed to limit the options and to tie the hands of the next Joe Biden administration. A previous treasurer, Larry Summers, who served under Bill Clinton, he said that it's very common that in the wake of pandemics, there are still aftershocks that are felt. And he says that this decision to remove this support simply ties in with the Trump administration's burn down the house approach, where they're trying to make an economic recovery as difficult as possible for the new president coming in next year.
And speaking of that new administration, which will be heading into the White House this January, we've talked a lot about what that could mean for everyday Americans, but what would it mean for neighbor Canada?
Right, so Canada is extremely economically dependent on its closest neighbour, the US. And so, of course, Biden's arrival in the White House signals a hugely different approach from the Trump administration's and a very different approach to their new economic partnership. So that means good news for some businesses, but there are others that are less thrilled about the prospect of a Biden administration. And so for more on that, we can listen to a report from our Canada correspondents.
Alors ici, nous fabriquons des structures en aluminium, des structures relativement complexes. On exporte ce produit-là dans une cinquantaine de pays à travers le monde.
The past 4 years for Patrick Garzani have been tough, in part due to tariffs imposed by Donald Trump's administration. Trump's imminent departure gives him hope.
Ça a créé beaucoup d'incertitudes. C'est une relation qui était très instable, très unilatérale. Et ce n'est pas la relation à laquelle deux voisins comme le Canada et les États-Unis sont habitués. C'est tout le secteur de l'aluminium, je dirais même le secteur manufacturier qui respire un petit peu parce que la situation retourne un petit peu vers ce qu'on peut appeler de normal.
In Canada, Joe Biden's win is giving hope to some and anxiety to others. Alberta is worried about the future of the Keystone XL pipeline. The pipeline extension project was relaunched by Trump. Biden plans to kill it.
I'm very pleased the Canadian government has made that a top priority for their early engagement to ensure that this project can continue to get built and ultimately get concluded. Ultimately, I think we'll need tens of thousands of jobs in Canada and probably a similar number in the U.S.
The Canadian economy largely depends on America. 75% of Canada's exports are sold to its southern neighbor. Experts warn Trump's protectionist policies could outlast him.
On a des accords de libre-échange avec les États-Unis, donc on ne serait pas supposé de venir mettre des tarifs douaniers, des quotas en plus. Donc cette mentalité du Buy American-là, ça peut être très dommageable pour nous, tant pour nos consommateurs que pour les consommateurs américains.
It's not a secret Canada is eager to work with the Biden administration. Justin Trudeau was the first leader to congratulate him. But they are also aware that Trump is still president until January 20th.
Back here in France, and despite everything that's going on, the Paris Air Forum opened today. Catherine, what are we hearing from the conference about how aviation industry professionals see the future of the sector?
Well, we're hearing more or less the same message that we have been hearing since the start of the pandemic. Essentially, that airlines are in deep financial trouble and they're going to need more financial backing if they're going to get out of this turmoil. Now, the IATA, that's the International Air Transport Association, they said that global airlines need up to $80 billion worth in aid in the next few months. And it will only be that can stop a number of global airlines from folding. Governments, of course, across the world have already given quite a lot in financial aid to airlines. But of course, with these new global travel restrictions that are still in place around the world, and of course, with the Northern Hemisphere going into winter, which is a low season for the industry, then the general financial outlook for the sector is still quite negative. And that's essentially the overall message that we have been hearing from the forum. Now, IATA previously predicted that the sector would lose $87 billion this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. They're now actually increasing that prediction. They say that the sector is likely to lose up to $100 billion due to the blow that it's been dealt by the pandemic. And in terms of recovery, any potential recovery is likely to be slow. IATA hopes that air traffic can get back to half of what it was pre-crisis by the end of next year, but it's not going to be until 2024 that we see air traffic levels get back to what they were before the pandemic.
Catherine Bennett with the day's top business news. Catherine, thank you very much. And we will be back with much more.